I'm Elizabeth, for those who don't know me, and I'm going to talk to you guys about this part of theology of the body that I think is really awesome. You are still in that mask right there. Oh my God, it's really scary. Called Original Solitude, okay? And I think it's really appropriate I think it's really appropriate to have a talk on solitude the week after Valentine's Day, right? Which has kind of turned into this holiday where you just celebrate not being single. And you're just really glad that you have somebody who loves you, and if you don't, then you kind of, I don't know, are perceived as a loser or kind of suck. I don't know. I don't think so. But I did hear this thing on the radio the other day. Hello. Thank you. I heard this thing on the radio the other day, right? And this girl called in. It was like Monday or Tuesday, and the DJ was like, "What are you doing on Valentine's Day?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm going to stay at home and watch a movie with my boyfriend pillow." And the guy was like, "You're what?" And she was like, "My boyfriend pillow." And he was like, "Where did you get that?" She was like, "Oh, my mom gave it to me." And the guy was like mimicking her mom, and he was like, "Oh, honey, here's a boyfriend pillow because my daughter's a loser." Like on the radio, and I was really scandalized. And I was like, she's not a loser just because she doesn't have a boyfriend. But then I had to go look up the boyfriend pillow. Maybe? Uh-oh. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, there it is. And I was like, okay, maybe a little bit. And so I was like giggling, and then I found this picture. And I was like, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Okay, anyways, so I'll just leave that up there for your viewing pleasure. All right, but our culture has really taught us that you kind of need to have a relationship, right? You guys have been taught that to be single is kind of a bad thing, you know? Like when you're alone, it's seen as a bad thing. You've been taught that solitude, that being alone, that being with just, with yourself and with God is a bad thing. But I am here to tell you, the reason they called me up here, is to tell you that that is not the case. And Pope John Paul II actually says that you need solitude. That's a part in your journey for authentic happiness, right? Maybe that's why the world is so miserable, because they have no idea. But you will after today. So in review of last week, we learned that the body speaks a language, right? Alan and Katie were up here, and he was trying to convey to her that he really loved her without his body, and it totally didn't work, and he got in a lot of trouble because he couldn't portray it without his body, right? He needed it. And we can see in our bodies that we are made for love. In being created male and female, we are made for love, right? So within the context of theology of the body, Pope John Paul II knew that we needed to go back to the beginning, right? The very beginning of time. And we only have, it was a swift decline, we only have about 3 verses in Genesis before the fall happened. And so we really want to focus on those verses tonight to kind of see what we can unpack from those, to kind of see what we can get to learn about what it means to be happy, right? So one of the things that he realized in those 3 verses was this thing called original solitude. And when Adam was in the garden, he was by himself with all the animals, right? And it was when he was with the animals, with no other people, that he realized that being friends with animals wasn't enough, sounds kind of silly, but if he had tried to have some sort of friendship with these animals, if he tried to have some sort of, man has reason, right? He's rational. So if he had tried to have some sort of conversation with the animals or something, like obviously it wouldn't happen. And so he realized, right, that he needed more than that. And so God revealed to him in his solitude, when he was by himself with God, that it wasn't good for man to be alone, right? That he needed someone else. And so he created Eve, and we kind of realize from this what the Pope calls original nakedness, which basically means that they saw in themselves their call to love. They saw in the other person the whole person, right? Now it's kind of not that way. Now bodies are really objectified. Now things are a little bit different. But back in the day, Adam looked at his bride Eve and saw that he was made to love her. Like, can you imagine, like, someone looking at you and just wanting to give a gift to you, wanting to really kind of give themselves and wanting to appreciate you for who you really are and not be judged? That was the state that they were in the garden, right? And then in that, we kind of see our call to love. And Naomi kind of went into how marriage is a sign and image of the Trinity, right? The husband gives himself to the bride receives that gift, gives it back, and the love between them is a third person. And this is an analogy that we have been given to understand God. last week, I guess, we talked about this verse from the catechism, or not a verse, this part from the catechism that says that God has revealed his secret, that God himself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is an eternal exchange of love, and he has destined us to share in that exchange, right? So the Father gives himself to the Son receives it and gives it back, and the love between them is the Holy Spirit. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me, because it would get really awkward. God is not a sexual being, right? It's an analogy that we've been given to understand God. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's the one we have. And so in that, we can see that we are meant to be a gift and that we are meant to love, right? And, okay, next slide, sorry. Bye, Ryan. Okay, so we can see the Pope says in Theology of the Body that from the very beginning in our bodies, we can see that we were called to love. We can see that we were called to love, and in that love be a gift, and this fulfills the meaning of his existence. Like if you've ever wondered why you're here, like what you're here for, why you were even created, what you're doing here, I can tell you it's to love, to be a gift, and not just ultimately in marriage or in, priesthood or religious life in your vocation, but love right now, to be a gift, right? And so if this being a gift is what we were created for, then that means that being a gift is what is going to make us happy. Okay, that's a lot of the really important stuff from my talk, so I guess I could stop now, but I'm not going to. Because I want to explain to you, right, if I just told you the key to happiness, if I just told you that to be happy means to be a gift and to authentically love, well, obviously, we're not in the Garden of Eden. Obviously, some things have changed since then. And obviously, look at Valentine's Day. That's not how the world looks at love anymore. That's not how the world looks at gift anymore. And so in order to be a gift, we kind of have to look at the situation we're in now and kind of see how to kind of figure out how we're going to be a gift with what we've been given. So I want to tell you guys a story. It's about one of my best friends, and he has dreamed his entire life of being in the NFL, right? He started playing flag football when he was like 6 or 7, and this was what he really wanted out of life, right? And so he worked his way up, got onto a really good college team, put up incredible stats, and when he graduated this last December, he moved to California to start training for the combine, which is where they pick the people for the draft, and it's like next week. So he has been training for the past, few months, actually his whole life, but really the past few months very intensely for this combine next week, where he's gonna go and he's gonna, do all these tests, situations, and they're gonna pretty much decide whether or not they want him on an NFL team. And he is working, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. Like, he is pouring all of himself into this goal, right? This dream that he's trying to accomplish. And we can kind of look at that and be like, okay, yeah, well, if you want to be in the NFL, then you should work really hard and you need to train. And if you showed up in Indianapolis and you hadn't done anything, he would be a laughing stock and you would be going nowhere with your football career. But we can easily see that he needs to train, and it's worth the sacrifice, right, to have this dream come true. But if what I just told you is true, like if it's true that to be a gift and to authentically love is what's going to really make you happy more than anything else in the world, then we should also be training for this, right? It should be just as important, more important even, than, the NFL is a noteworthy goal, but it's more important to learn how to be a gift of yourself, to learn how to love, because one day his football career will be over, right? One day, what we think we want out of life, even if we get everything we want, even if he goes in the draft and gets everything he wants, even if all our dreams come true, what's really going to make us happy is what lasts forever, right? Is being a gift, is love. And so I really want to talk to you guys about being in training to give of yourself, to love, right? And his goal, he's training now and then his goal will happen. But for us, it's not the case. We start now. Like, we work every day to be a better gift of ourselves now. So that's what I want to talk to you about. Solitude is the time that God's given you to train, to work, to be able to be a gift, to be love. So I want to start in the culture, because I think there's a lot we can figure out by our culture. Yeah, okay, go. No. My pain, and he just might make me smile, but the whole time I'm wishing he was here instead. Oh, okay, Taylor. I think Taylor is a really good place to start to learn how to be happy, right? Because she's got to figure it out. She's a great role model, Taylor. Okay, one of the things I think we can learn from sweet Taylor is that happiness isn't going to lie in pouring yourself out over and over and over, in relationships or in worldly things, right? Because every album, she's still just as empty as she was before. And, every album we're like, okay, like, I'm so sorry you're so sad, but it's the same story over. And I guess I listened to a lot of radio, because on the radio the other day, I heard they were talking about her and Harry and their tragic breakup. And he was like, she was like, the radio announcer was like, man, Taylor, maybe it's just time that you take some time and figure out who you really are. And I was like, well, okay. But there is a lot of truth to that, right? We can see that it's not just Taylor, poor thing, but we could see in other artists too that isn't going to make you happy. There's an emptiness inside of us. There's an emptiness, there's a longing, there's an ache that I think all of us get to where we feel, right? And this emptiness, the world tries to tell us to fill it, right? If you feel empty, if you feel lonely, if you feel uncomfortable, you need to fill it right away. And now more than ever, you guys have opportunities to do that. Like, you can be listening to your music all the time. You could be doing it now. I wouldn't even know. Like, you can be listening to music all the time. You can go out and, party with your friends. You can drink or smoke away any sort of pain. You can pour yourself into relationships, which is, I think, Taylor's route. You can pour yourself into relationships. You can be on instant messaging, that was back in my day. You can be on Twitter, and you can do all these other things that seek to fill the emptiness, right? But that's not going to make you happy. And what I have to tell you and what I want you to get from this is that when you feel that emptiness, right, when you feel that ache and that loneliness, that's God telling you that he's ready for more of you. That is God revealing in your heart that it is time to go deeper with him. And a lot of times we miss it, right? Because we pour, all sorts of other things on top of it to try and erase that feeling. But really, God is trying to show you that he wants more of you. So don't be afraid of that emptiness, right? Because before we can be a gift, we have to really find out who we are. But we can't even hear what's going on until we're empty, all right? The next culture.
Not sure what I stand for. What do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
Okay, that song is like really upbeat and really happy and really exciting, and you kind of like, or at least me, like the first few times I heard it, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just kind of was like listening to it. But the more that I listened to the words, basically, he has reached a point, Mr. Fun, has reached a point where he's like, I am not having fun anymore. And I don't know, like he's basically like, I wake up and I'm like, what do I stand for? And I think this is something that all of us encounter. Personally, little baby story, I realized this. Do y'all remember Regina George? Last time, I had this friend named Regina George. That wasn't her real name, but she totally was her. Okay, so back in the day when we were friends, I was probably like 15, I think. Regina George and I found ourselves hiding in the woods from the cops who were chasing us on foot after we had fled a party. And poor Regina's like weeping over here, like so scared, and I'm like shivering because I'm like really scared and it's really cold because I forgot my jacket. I was in a hurry. And so we ran out, and I remember we were sitting in the woods like on the ground. I think we were like in this ditch situation, and I could see the cops with his flashlight. I was like, dude, we're goners. And I was like, okay, my life is over. But in the meantime, what just happened to me? Like, how did I find myself here? Like, what is it really, though? I didn't think in these words, but like, what do I stand for, really? Because I'm out here. This is at the time when I was like really involved in church, and these weren't my church friends. And I was at church, I was sitting there, and I was like, if my youth minister, Matt Regetz, could see me now, he'd really want me to go and give that talk at the retreat this weekend. Like, who am I? Like, I need to figure it out, hopefully not from jail. And so I was like, I need to get my crap together and figure it out. And I think this is something that, hopefully your situation is not as dramatic as mine, but this is something we all come across. We realize that we need to figure it out what it is we stand for. And I would say, and through my years of reflection, that, a lot of times we look to the outside, right? We look to the world to kind of see what's out there. Like, I defined myself, I was a Silverado, that was our drill team. I was on drill team, I was vice president, I was best friends with Regina George, I was dating Bradley. I had all these things that I wanted and that I defined myself, and I took them and I internalized them, and then I sat with them, all of them, and tried to use that to mold me, right? But I think that's upside down. I think what God wants from us is to go on to the inside. Because since all of you are baptized, you have God within you. Like, you don't need to do anything else to get him. He's already there, right now, in all of you. And what we need to do is we need to peel off the layers of sin and the layers of doubt and fear and look inside of ourselves to find him, because that's where he is, right? And once we find our identity, once we go inside, then we can pour out on the outside. Then we can take what we have and the foundation of who we are and pour out into the world. We can make that gift of ourselves. And one of the best ways to find our identity is in silence. And that's, you guys have it really hard because it's really hard to be quiet now. It's really hard to turn off your music, to get off of Twitter, to not be on Facebook. Like, it's really hard because you have so many opportunities to be noisy. But I encourage you that in the silence, you will find him. Like, that is where you will find your identity. And I want to tell you a story about this awesome girl. Anyone know her? Her name's Blessed Chiara Luce. She was 17 years old, guys. She's a beatified 17-year-old. That's like a lot of you. Or almost. She was a very normal girl. She lived in Italy. She failed her first year of high school. She hated math. She had a bunch of friends, and she was really good at sports. But Chiara got teased a lot for being a Christian. People knew that she was Catholic, and they teased her all the time for it. And I'll go over the summer, she took a trip. She was part of this youth movement called Focolare. She took this trip, and she encountered Christ there. She wrote home to her parents, and she was like, this suffering is really hard, but it's worth it now if I can join my suffering to Jesus, okay? So she had this encounter with Jesus. She was 16 years old, guys, 16. And she had this encounter with Jesus, so I know all of you can do it, because she did. And then a few months later, she was playing tennis with one of her friends, and she dropped her racket because she had this huge pain in her right shoulder, right? She went to the doctor, and it was revealed that she had a rare and painful form of bone cancer. And so Chiara, like everyone should, especially young people, she was like, well, I'm strong, I'll fight it, like no big deal, like let's go. And so she, got into a bunch of treatments and all this stuff, and she was fighting it till the doctor told her that she wasn't going to win. And they were like, Chiara, this is going to kill you. And so she went into her room. Her mom said she took 25 minutes. And after she came out, she said, if you wanted Jesus, then I want it too. And that became her motto. And, she was really weak. She would be in the hospital, and she would walk with these depressed patients because she wasn't upset. She would walk with these depressed patients, and it would really hurt her. And her parents would be like, Chiara, you need to rest. And she's like, I'll have plenty of time to sleep later. I'm going to go cheer these people up. She loved her physical appearance. She was really into beauty and stuff like everyone. But when she lost her hair, every time a lock of hair would fall, she would weep, and she would hold it up, and she would be like, it's for you, Jesus. If you want it, Jesus, I want it too. And so she slowly declined and got sick. One day she was talking to her mom. She was an only child. Her parents had been infertile for 11 years, and she was an only child, and her mom, of course, was a mess. And she told her mom to bury her in a wedding dress because this was her wedding with Jesus. And so she and her mom spent the last few days planning her funeral, which she considered her wedding, all the details down. And she was like, Mom, when you're dressing me in my wedding dress, just tell yourself over and over, like, Chiara is looking at Jesus now. And her very last words were, bye, Mom, be happy because I am. Guys, like being the most popular guy in school, finding a boyfriend, even a husband who loves you with everything will not fulfill you like that. Only God can fill you like that. Only God can fill you from the inside out to where you are rejoicing at your death and comforting those around you because you know where you're going and you can't wait to get there, right? Prayer is how you guys are going to reach that point with Jesus. And you might be like, Elizabeth, you have no idea what I've been through. Actually, since I was running from the cops, maybe I do have a little bit of an idea. You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea. God could never take me back. God could never love me. That is not true. You are not defined by what you've done. You are not defined by your status in school. You're not defined by the parties you go to, the people you're dating, the sports you play, the college you're getting into. You are defined by being a child of God. And that is where you find your identity. And when you have that, you will be able to make a gift of yourself because you will have yourself to give. I have one last part of Solitude. I know, transition from Chiara Luce to Maria.
I'll only stay with you one more night. Try to tell you no, but my body keeps on telling you yes. Try to tell you stop, but your lipstick got me so out of breath. I'll be waking up in the morning, probably hating myself. And I'll be waking up feeling satisfied, but guilty as hell. But baby, they are talking.
Yet another song that we listen to and we laugh about. But I hope none of you have had to feel that, like waking up in the morning and being like, oh, what did I do? And feeling really guilty. I've been there. It really sucks. And one of the things that's so important to work on in solitude is called self-mastery, right? Getting to where you have control over your passions. They're going to talk more about this next week, but I can't give a solitude talk without mentioning it. Really working to break yourself of any addictions, really working to get yourself to a place where you have yourself to give. Because until you have yourself, until you're free, until you have your will, it's going to be really hard to make a gift of yourself. Now, that being said, you can start now, right? A lot of times we gain self-mastery by working to give. We gain self-mastery by making sacrifices for others, by giving of ourselves. But I do want to emphasize that it's important that we get to where we have this freedom, because when you have the freedom, then you are able to give. So I just kind of want to wrap up. Reemphasize that, making a gift of yourself starts now, right? It starts today. It's not like we're training now and later we're going to go to a combine and show all our skills. No, now is when you start making that gift of yourself, because that is when you are going to be happy, and I desperately want happiness for you. I don't want any of you guys to have to suffer like I had to suffer. I don't want any of you to be laying in your bed at nights being like, what do I stand for? Like, who am I? No, I want you guys to be happy, and that means that you're going to have to learn to make that gift of yourself, right? Because that's where you're going to find fulfillment. So you could pull a Haley and tutor your friends, make sacrifices like that for people, maybe not tutoring, but make sacrifices like that of your time. You could not pull a Taylor Swift and be single for a while if that's what you need to do, or not. If you need to be in a relationship, do that, but not rebound after relationships, really taking the time to reestablish your identity, really taking time to figure out who you are and be silent. This verse, Elijah was told to go and look for the Lord back in the Old Testament. And so he was hiding in this cave, and this fire came by and this wind came by, and I don't know what else came by, something else came by. Anyway, and none of it was Jesus, God. None of it was God. But then he heard a light, silent sound, a still small voice. And he hid himself in fear, because that is where God was, guys. God is in the quiet. He's in the quiet. So I think it would be a good idea to be quiet, so that you can hear God, and he can come to you, and he can give you that purpose and that meaning. And the last quote I have is this quote from Mother Teresa, who's my patron. Super love her. And it's basically saying, people kind of suck, and we're all really fallen, and if you go out there and you try to make a gift of yourself and you try to love, you will be persecuted. It will be hard for you. I promise. It's so much easier to just go to the parties and drink away all your suffering, but don't do it, because that's not where happiness lies, guys. I mean, you can if you want, but I would implore you not to, because that is not where happiness lies. It will not make you happy, guys. Happiness lies in making a gift of yourself, and when you make that gift, people are going to persecute you, but love them anyway. Do it anyway. That's basically what this is saying. Also, don't drink. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse anybody. Okay, anyway, so Mother Teresa says to do it anyway, even if you're going to suffer for it. And I promise you guys that, in this series, you're going to hear all sorts of awesome stuff about theology of the body, about loving God with your bodies, about looking at your bodies to know things that God's revealed to us. But really, primarily, it all comes back to being a gift. So be brave, guys. Go out and be a warrior. Fight for Jesus and fight for love and fight for happiness, because I promise that is where you will be happy.